Okay, the past 24 hours have been really interesting as Trump, well, actually the entire US, has been letting go many a new announcements, alright? I mean, I was already preparing every single one of you that the next 48 hours are going to be quite eventful, mostly along the lines that we're going to get new tariffs. But here's a little bit of the news that came out today. President Trump sends out more tariff letters with the following tariff rates announced today. Cambodia, 36%, Thailand 36%, Bangladesh 35%, Serbia 35%, Indonesia 32%, Bosnia 30%, Tunisia 25%, Japan 25%, and South Korea 25%. These tariffs are all set to go live on August 1st. President Trump says any retaliation will be met with even more increased tariffs. So that's quite interesting. Now, at the same time, we've seen the Dow Jones move quite a lot of points down. Here, the 10-year note yield is back now back to 4.4% as well. If we're taking a look at the S&P as well, we can actually see it has been falling throughout the day. But I personally think this brings yet again a pretty good opportunity to buy that dip. Because when you think about it, you basically get yourself last week's prices again right now. But to me, the more interesting part is that this could just be the start of a whole new sweep of new tariffs, right? I mean, it's already quite big, but there could be so much more. One thing, US offers EU 10% tariffs trade deal, Politico reports. S&P losses accelerate to over minus 0.5% on the day, putting the index on track for its largest daily loss since June 17th. And at the same time, our crypto coins have also been going down for the most part. I mean, some coins are still up ever so slightly. XDC is up a little bit, BONK and Volta are up a little bit, AB is up a little bit, but for the most part, everything has been falling down. Again, not by real crazy numbers, no, but it's not been a really good day. Again, we can attribute a good reason for it though, right? We know. Now, there is also some fear I noticed. I mean, I've been talking about my positions here a lot. For example, my $650,000 XRP trade, some of the other trades, and well, when I looked at the comments, a lot of people were saying, yeah, but we expect the market to still face yet another massive fall. And to that, I also have this posed by Ansem. He said, can't tell if I'm too bear hold by being cautious here because of PTSD from previous cycles, or if we're due for another minus 20% on majors. And then Jez said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm generally at lowest exposure, about 25%, since I rebought in March. Just enough to be happy if we send and my Bitcoin hedge will blow out and I'll be back to 75%. But the way I personally see it is, there's a few different hedging strategies. There's a few of the ones, well, let me say it like this. There's a few strategies I think make a lot of sense at this point in the market. But my own personal thoughts are that the best course of action right now is to not be too, I would say, cautious. Now, take this with a grain of salt, but my thinking process is the following. From almost any angle, the world is in a bit of a strange position in terms of all the turmoil, in terms of the tariffs, everything, right? I mean, we've seen Elon Musk start a new party. Now, think about Elon Musk as you will. He's a bad guy, he's a good guy, whatever. We've seen Trump make statements about how this Bitcoin stuff is taking a lot of pressure off of the dollar. We're seeing World Liberty Finance and Pump Fund, some of the biggest, most hyped up launches come on the board, really. It's a really, really interesting time for crypto. But I personally think about it like this. If we look back in 6 months from now, will it have been worth it to wait for a dip and just be cautious and blah, blah, blah? Well, again, if you're hedging it partially, you're just keeping a little bit of money on the side, potentially having a small short open just for the case in which we go down. I think that's all fair. That's all fair because, again, you might want to be safe. But if we're even looking at the S&P, really, over time, it has almost never made sense to wait it out. If we're looking at the daily chart, for example, right, you might say, oh, but if I had bought right here at $6,000, I would have hated myself the moment it went all the way towards 4,800, which is true. But then think about it from this angle. Let's say you were to get in at this price. So let's say about $6,040 right there. Let's draw it in. Right there you got in. For a while, you might be down on your investment here. You might be up a little bit, but if you did not sell this peak, which most people do not, and this I'm going to compare it to the crypto space in just a second, then here you felt some very, very negative thoughts because the price went down for a while. Matter of fact, from your entry, the price went down roughly 20% in just 4 months. You might have felt really, really awful. What if though? right? You got in right there. All of a sudden, the price dropped a juicy percent. You got in right there for a second time, right? And again, you might have entered here with 80%. Maybe you were already in like what, 80%, whatever. There we go, percent. And then all of a sudden here you add another 10%. And this is 10% of your remaining balance. And here you add at the, the $5,000 mark, you add another 10%. Now this, I think, is very unrealistic. I think most people, actually, as the price goes down lower, still have significantly more to add, because if we just again look at some average portfolio here, or for example, a person here, most people, as we trend towards highest prices, are, fun fact, not actually that much exposed. Because if you were fully in already, if you're fully in, you're not really asking, hey, should I enter now or should I wait? No, most of those people are not in. So this 80-10-10, this is a very, very specific scenario for people who already had a high average price, or who bought in right there and then are having second thoughts, right? But anyway, let's just go with the scenario here, even though I think for most people this is not the case. Let's say they were in and they really don't have that much money to buy dips. Still, think about this though. Throughout this journey, you would have felt awful for about 4 months, sure. But eventually, right, this buy right here, and actually, fun fact, this buy right here, all would have been in a massive amount of profit given some more time. And so when you look at it from the perspective of should you wait? Well, for the S&P, for a very good amount of time, it could have been worth it. Matter of fact, if you were thinking of buying, for example, here in April, and you actually decided to not buy, and you were, or let's just say here in May, you decided to not buy because you were waiting, even in April, you had the chance later on, for example, here, you can see the price went down lower. Here, if you did not buy, eventually the price went down lower a few months afterwards. At this point, though, you see, if you did not catch this dip the moment we broke through, you actually were not able to get yourself in between August of 2024 all the way until April of 2025, so about 8 months, but realize it from another angle, right? So you might say, well, but I was able to buy back in April of 2025, so if I just waited, it would have been worth it. Yeah, but in the middle, it went from this price range of about, let's just call it $5,000, all the way 21% up, 20% up in 200 days. And then it did indeed go a bit down, like 21% or so. But so in this middle ground, you missed out on this entire generational run to kind of wait for a generational pullback, which again, if you had bought in right there, you could have caught the move all the way up. Then perhaps you either sold because you were in a lot of profit, or again, your average price would be right there. So over time, this would just be good. Even when we went down, you'd not be down that much because your average was pretty low, right? You'd only be down 7%. But also, you could have just added even more the moment it went down. All it comes down to is, are you a bit unlucky in the sense that you buy exactly before the market turns around? If you've got some patience though, relatively, as long as you just try to really get your major buys in under the major moving averages, if you're a scared investor that only wants things that are like underpriced really, that's again right now, if you were to buy the S&P below like 5,700, 5,800, that's again if you want a solid entry that is quote unquote cheap, right? And for Bitcoin, as of this point, that would basically be about $86,000 or so if you wanted a very, very cheap entry. Which, again, the last time we got that was in about April at 74,000, 75,000. But then from an opposite angle, I keep looking at it from this way. XRP, by the way, if you're wondering, the current cheap price, I'm going to call about $1.80, somewhere in that price range. But let me again say it like this. Is it worth it to wait for that pullback? Most times, I'd say no. Most times, I think it's worth it to get yourself a solid position in, especially based on the fact that the market is in such a crazy position right now, and then adjust accordingly if the market turns against you. Because even if you get into XRP right now and the market does turn against you, how far can it really go down, right? Because at this point, for example, if we're to go below $1.80, you're getting yourself such a cheap asset. And again, we know Bitcoin eventually has to start that massive leg up. It cannot be more than 6 months for my own calculations. And as it currently stands, Bitcoin's dominance as well, it seems to have peaked. Is it worth it to miss a generational run because you're waiting for that just slightly lower price, that 20% down, that whatever. Maybe, perhaps if you're a day trader, you're looking for the best opportunity. Again, you can try to buy cheap and only buy when it's cheap. But what most people will do is they'll wait for the cheap buy. For example, with XRP below $1.80. They'll wait for the cheap buy with Bitcoin below 87,000. But since the price only goes up and up and up, they eventually settle to buy Bitcoin at 150,000. Again, in my S&P example, it could be they wanted to buy in right here at 5,200. but the price only went up and up and up and up and up. So instead of buying at 5,300 or 5 whatever, let's just say right here at 5,330, right? But they wanted it lower. Instead of buying right there, they waited. All of a sudden, the price went to 5,700, and they decided, oh, you know what? It's never coming back down, because that's what most people do. They buy in right there, and then all of a sudden starts crashing back down towards your entry. Well, if you at that point had waited, you could be pretty juicy. But again, you may get unlucky. You buy anyway. I don't have to explain it 1,000 more times. I mean, really, when I start looking at the comments, most people are quite negative. They all keep saying, yeah, it's time. Yeah, we need to really start breaking down. Oh, the tariffs are going to come in and kick our ass. If they do, we've got our strategy set. We're going to be buying the freaking crap out of it. And if you really want to only wait for the tariffs to get a juicier entry, hey, I understand. But over time, again, just by zooming out, most people did not get rich by waiting for the right moment to buy. The major factor is just knowing when to sell, because Bitcoin, the S&P, every single one of these assets has been permanently upwards. You would have never been able to be at a loss except for like a few days. For example, if you bought the S&P earlier today, right now you might be at a bit of a loss. If you bought Bitcoin last week, you might be at a bit of a loss. But we just literally yesterday made the highest weekly close ever for Bitcoin. The S&P just keeps going up and up and up. If you have a strategy of, hey, get yourself in a juicy spot, if push comes to shove and the price goes down a lot, you enter a little bit more, and if it goes down significantly, you enter a little bit more. This is kind of like a foolproof system over time. On the short term, you may not love it, but over time, this always works, at least with these assets that are permanently upwards moving. 9 out of 10 times, though, you're actually able to sell your initial buy for a bit of profit as well. Most of the times, though, that profit is not good enough for people, which is why they eventually sell the moment it goes down a little bit. But again, once it goes against what you think was going to happen, if the price is going down, the only thing you have to focus on now is not panic selling. If you want to panic sell, you better also, in my opinion, add a massive short. Why? Because the moment you panic sell, you should also just make sure it goes to zero, because otherwise there would have been no point in selling. Unless you're selling it and then buying back cheaper, but 99% of the people can't do that, so why even attempt it? Why not go with a strategy that works 99% of the time, which is you buy and you just shut up and wait. Again, you can be a bit more specific with where exactly you buy big chunks, but earlier today, I added a few 100,000, actually just 70,000, I think, to my XRP trade here, just to up it a little bit. Why? To prove a point of it doesn't really matter where you buy, because most of these trades will do extremely amazing over a bit of time. Again, we didn't buy the perfect spot, but it's okay, because we know where it's headed, and XRP seems to really be in a juicy spot here for a breakout. There was actually a funny comment, though, and that was actually from CZ. He said, if you want to get rich quick, don't touch crypto. I think that was kind of funny. And I really want to also zoom in a little bit on the fact that really, for the most part, we have not seen any volatility for the past couple of weeks. You might say, yeah, but no. Really, we've not been moving. A 2% pump excites me right now because it's just been that boring. So the moment things do start happening, though, all of a sudden it's going to be busy times. By the way, also, the U.S. government deposited a couple $100,000 worth of ETH to Coinbase. Just wanted to quickly bring that up. And if you're an XRP holder, a Ripple supporter, something quite interesting. Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple, said, I'm honored to be invited to testify in front of the Senate Banking Committee this Wednesday on the need for passing crypto market structure legislation. Thank you, Banking GOP Chairman Tim Scott, Senator Loomis, and Ruben Gallego, as leaders of the Subcommittee for Digital Assets. Your leadership, both with this hearing and over the years, is championing the crypto industry, has been critical to getting us this important moment. Constructive crypto market structure legislation in the U.S. is imperative in bringing about a new era of innovation and financial opportunity while protecting consumers. Anyway, all I'll say is I'm right now watching XRP's breakout really closely. I'm going to be monitoring this every freaking hour because I'm pretty excited for finally another move. I'm hoping it's going to be towards the upside. It does seem likely though. And if you're wondering what else to watch, just pay close attention on the new tariff announcements over the next like 24 hours or so. I mean, he's been announcing some trade deals here and there. Probably today on the 8th, there's going to be a lot more news that comes out. But I'm just telling you right now, if all of a sudden Trump goes on a rampage here, I mean, this is like the deadline, sort of, right? So, I mean, if the pause stops in like a day-ish, things could get quite interesting for that. So, pay close attention to that. And that's about it for this little thought experiment, this little video. If you want to trade crypto, I've got some links down below to my bots and just to my normal trading platform, Blowfin. Check it out. Links are down below. And that's about it.